All right, we will restart again. So I hope everybody is well refreshed, had some coffee. Maybe is a little bit more awake than 9 a.m., so it could maybe help. So now I would like to introduce you to Rauri from Relative Insights. I think we already heard a lot about how we can create a customer experience, how we can learn from customer experience. Now we will learn more what we can do with the data that we capture from customers and how we can use that to learn again more and improve the experience to customers. So Rauri, stage is yours.
Hey everybody, thanks very much for joining. As we've already heard there, my name is Rauri. I promise that is a photo of me. It's just, it's a couple of haircuts ago. I'm reliably informed that this looks better. Relative Insight, as Simon's just said there, we're a text analytics company, and we're going to talk today about the work that we're doing overlaying analytics on top of customer journey mapping. Just a bit of an agenda. We'll talk a bit about Relative Insight, who we are, what we do, and where we came from, because we've got a really, really proud heritage. And then we're going to talk about the work that we're doing now with customer journeys, and then finish, hopefully, with some specific examples of work with our customers and how we're helping them improve customer experience and customer journeys along the way. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A, but of course, if you have got any questions, just raise your hand and interrupt me. You'll probably be bored of hearing my voice, so do interrupt and I'll do my best to answer any questions as we go along. So, as I say, we've got a really proud heritage. Relative Insight was actually born out of law enforcement. So we use a unique comparative methodology to get insight from unstructured text data. And the first way that we used that was to compare the way that people were talking online, and we were able to tell the difference between a child or an adult doing really sophisticated impersonations of children. And obviously, at that point, that was to help us put bad guys in jail. Now what we do is use that same comparative methodology with customer data to help businesses to better understand what their customers are saying and what the customer experience is like. And as I say, over the last year or so, we've been doing more and more work helping businesses improve their customer journeys. You'll all probably be tired of hearing the word customer journey mapping. It's sort of something it feels like you can't move in the world of CX without hearing people talk about customer journeys. But just, I suppose, to define what we mean by that, a customer journey map is this idea of a visual representation of your customer's experience throughout their life cycle with your business. And it's obviously becoming increasingly important because really large corporations are investing lots of time and energy and resource in developing these customer journey maps. But what's interesting is that a recent study by IBM showed that of all of the companies in the US specifically that had gone through this process, 47% of them, nearly half, then didn't make any changes based on that customer journey over the next 12 months. Which tells us one of two things, right? Either they're getting it right first time and largely by accident because they've not looked at this before, which seems perhaps a little bit unlikely. Or they're not learning from that process. And likely not learning from that process because they don't have the ability, they don't have the tools to be able to. So many people are seeing that customer journey map as a finish line rather than as the kind of constant iteration and improvement tool that we've all been talking about today. So we see the customer journey map as a catalyst for business enhancement. If you think about it, every point along that customer journey will have data points associated with it, lots of that data being quantitative, but an awful lot of it also being qualitative. And that's where some of the real nuggets lie, but they're just very, very difficult to get. The other thing that we see in the literature around customer journey mapping is this concern around oversimplification. Because if you just take customer care as an example, that might be one box in the flow diagram that is your customer journey map. But within that, there's a whole load of different human behaviors, emotional context, buying signals, decision-making criteria that exist within that box. And without some way of deep diving into it and understanding it, you risk losing all of that nuance and losing all of that actionable intelligence. And so the importance of analysis alongside that customer journey map is to make sure that it is a dynamic document. It's a dynamic tool to help you to continue to improve rather than a very static and benign document that sort of gets done and then put on a shelf to gather dust. And so at Relative Insight, this is I suppose, in a way, philosophically how we see the world, right? On the left-hand side of the screen, you've got all of these different data points, these different customer experience, customer or voice of the customer journey interactions. In terms of what that really looks like, those could be your surveys, this could be interactions with chatbots, it can be CX transcripts from calls, it can be reviews online, it can be any form of customer data where you're gathering feedback. And we're automatically ingesting that data into our environment, and we're using that unique comparative methodology to help you to get actionable insight out of it. Lots of different ways that we can leverage comparison, but if you think about, say, longitudinal analysis, you're comparing month on month or week on week in order to understand the trends within that customer data that might explain fluctuations in key metrics, whether that's revenue, whether that's CSAT, whether that's NPS. But also, you might want to compare, how are we performing in UK versus mainland Europe? Or how are we performing with one segment versus another segment? And by using comparison, you can compare how each different customer group is speaking to you. You can uncover the nuanced differences in all of those things. And that will then enable you to make real change that is going to drive improvements in your customer journey for each one of those different groups. And of course, we're then helping you to report on all of that. And I think something that we've learned through our journey is historically we were asking people to adopt a new language of relative insight and a metric of relative difference that we use. And what we've learned is that senior stakeholders don't have time or, frankly, the inclination to do that. And so what we're now doing is pushing the analysis and helping the customers that we work with integrate this analysis into the places where people are already looking. It sounds a little bit old school, but one of the best ways that we found to do this is with email reporting. So automated emails being pushed out to stakeholders, because everyone's got an email inbox and everybody's used to using it. And so you click on an email, you read some of the key points, and then if you have further questions, you can be signposted to the right people to be able to do that. Data enrichment, so pushing insights into your existing environments. That might be Azure, it might be Snowflake, to enable you to do your own dashboarding or to do further analysis on that. Or finally, pushing directly into dashboarding systems, whether that's a Power BI or a Tableau, or actually pushing directly into Salesforce or other CRM systems in order to make sure that the insights are ending up in the right hands of stakeholders. Because I think that's another gap that we've seen within customer journey mapping, is that it's fantastic doing all of this work, but we've heard loads over the last couple of days about silos within CX and the data not landing in the right people's hands. And so we've worked really, really closely with our customers to make sure that we're not just doing fantastic work, again, to sit on a shelf and gather dust, but we're doing all of this work, we're doing it over time, and we're putting it in a way that is then actionable by the relevant stakeholders. So, to break that down a little bit more and start to look at it within the customer journey, refreshing or to see that this customer journey is not dissimilar from some of the things that we've already seen today and this morning. But we've got the different stages within the customer there, and alongside each one of them, we've put a data source. Now, at this point, the data source could be sort of largely arbitrary. You know, at inquiry level, the first point of contact might be a chatbot on a website or on an app. During welcoming, you might be surveying your customers to understand how that onboarding process has gone. Customer care systems, whether that's Genesis or NICE or anything else, you can see that each of these different stages in the customer journey has a different data point associated with it, or it might be that there are multiple data points that are associated with it. What we've learned, again, through working with our customers is it can be really interesting to analyze each one of those individually, and we're going to look at that in a moment. But the other thing that's fantastically valuable is the ability to gather all of that data together from all of those different platforms into one analytics engine in order to uncover the macro trends of what's going on within your customer journey, to then be able to split that back out and understand, okay, where are the pain points? Where are the barriers? Where do we need to be investing our time and energy in order to make sure that we're making change that is going to improve the customer experience, because ultimately that has to be what this is all about. And so a quick example of what that might look like. He says, there we go. So at each point along your different customer journey, you've got all of these different data sources, and you're going to get different insights at each point. So here we see that perhaps at an inquiry that the UX is fantastic and customers are really, they're direct and they're able to find what they need to find very easily, but actually they're seeing lots of payment errors. So what does that tell you? Well, it means that you need to go and do something about those payment barriers, because that's a real challenge. It's a real difficulty for customers coming on board. Or perhaps at that customer care area that we were talking about before, of your promoters, they're significantly more likely to talk about friendly staff, but actually what they're telling you is that the staff, although very amenable, aren't particularly knowledgeable. And so investing time and energy in educating those staff around your product offerings or around the customer journey itself and what the main challenges and barriers are, you can help to improve that customer care and drive people along that customer journey towards sort of loyalty, cross-sell and upsell, and obviously, hopefully then repurchase and customer retention at the end of that life cycle. So we're going to dive in now, as I say, to some specific examples of work that we're doing with our customers. Comcast, I'm sure you'll be familiar with, and we work with them a lot around their customer care area. So you can imagine, we're talking about Xfinity broadband here, and so it's a commodity that's something that customers are very likely to change, they're very price sensitive on. And we ingest all of the data from their online chatbot. And so Xfinity Assistant is a hybrid AI and human-powered online chatbot, and we take all of the data from that and ingest it automatically into our environment in order to understand what it is that customers are saying and how they can speed up resolution and how they can obviously ultimately retain customers. And we push those insights out into Power BI. And a couple of really interesting things that they found. Firstly, was that of all of their detractors, people who are giving them low NPS and CSAT scores and threatening to cancel, 70% of them will stay if they're offered a discount. Now, that probably won't come as a huge surprise to anybody in the room, but what it enabled them to do is firstly, understand what the drivers for maybe some of that negative CSAT are, particularly at the end of a life cycle and particularly in the presence of good NPS and good CSAT scores up until that point. But also, and it maybe sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but what they did was started to offer that discount earlier in the customer interaction process. Because what that does is it secures the customer, it helps them to renew, which in this instance is the ultimate goal. But it also just speeds up the resolution time, and it potentially stops you spending lots of time, lots of customer agent time, investing time and energy in resolving issues that maybe don't really exist and actually getting to the nub of the issue. And so they found that that's dramatically increased their renewal rates, but it's also dramatically increased their speed to resolution, both of which are fantastically valuable to them. The second point was really interesting. So outage is obviously a big challenge for any telecoms network. And they were investing lots of time and energy in preventing outages from happening, right? So understanding what the root cause of those were and stopping them from happening. What they'd missed, though, and what they learned through analyzing is that actually when outages are really, really well handled, when they're communicated effectively, when they're resolved quickly, it was an opportunity to improve customer satisfaction. And customer satisfaction, of course, being linked to that retention. So as well as investing the same time and energy in improving their outages, they also improved their communication around those things. So communicating with people early to say, we know that there's an outage in your area, letting them know that engineers were on site, and then letting them know when it should have been resolved and saying, hey, get in touch with us if you're not back online. And through doing all of that, they were able to improve their customer satisfaction. Now, we're going to talk about the Arizona State Sun Devils. I'm a big American sports fan, but I can imagine that I might be sort of in a minority in the room on that. But ASU are a huge collegiate athletics program in the US. And for those of you who aren't familiar, college sports in the States is big, big business. It's a big shop window for the university. And in particular, college football is where a lot of the revenue is driven from. And it's the revenues from college football that then go on to support the students in other areas of the sport. ASU have over 100,000 people that attend one of their football games. And that revenue that comes from those tickets is a really, really important part of driving their athletic excellence across the college and therefore keeping people coming back. And so at the loyalty stage of their customer journey, they issue a survey through Qualtrics. And again, they're using that email reporting framework that I mentioned earlier on. in order to understand exactly what people like and dislike about coming to their games so that they can keep people coming back, so that they can really drive that loyalty. And a couple of things that they found. So they identified that parking was a real issue, but by being able to deep dive in and dive into the open-ended responses, they were able to not just understand that it was parking, they were able to understand whereabouts in the parking journey those problems were having, and particular issues around parking that customers had. And they realized that the reason that was such a problem was that often, if you were delayed in terms of your parking, you were then delayed getting into the stadium, you missed a lot of the activations that were supposed to happen, and in some instances even missed kickoff, which led to people saying, well, I'd rather watch the game at home on TV than have to go out and travel to do anything about it. And so what we were able to do is identify those issues for them and again link that back into their CRM so they could go back to the people who had made these parking complaints and say, we're really, really sorry about the issues that you've had. This is what we've done to resolve it. And hey, by the way, here's a free, here's free parking at the next game. Here's a voucher for a free beer when you come back. We'd love to welcome you back to the stadium. And they've seen that that's helped to improve retention around season ticket holders, but also keep single game buyers coming back. And then the other thing that they noticed was that in that 15-minute window after some of the sort of ceremony that had happened before the game and the singing of the national anthem and those sorts of things, but before the game actually kicked off, people were complaining about sort of a bit of a dead spot in that point. And so they made some changes around the advertising hoardings, and instead of showing static ads, what they started to do was share highlight reels and hero moments from previous seasons. And not only has that kept people in their seats and engaged, it's also started to drive some social media traction. So people are taking pictures of those things and they're starting to share them to social media. And so it's taken what was a real dead spot in the window to a real positive in terms of their fan experience. And then finally, we're going to talk about Bojangles. Bojangles, a chicken and biscuit shop, a quick service restaurant in the US. And again, at that loyalty stage, which is where we do loads of our work around loyalty and around surveys, they've been analyzing their data and relative insight and then using this email reporting framework to share those insights with key people. And the challenge that they were facing is that they're rapidly expanding and they use a franchise model, but a number of their franchises were failing really, really early in the journey. And that's a problem for them because there's obviously a lot of setup cost, and if that franchise then doesn't go on to be successful, there's a huge cost to the head office of Bojangles for that. And again, through analysis and regular analysis and ongoing analysis of their loyalty surveys, they learned that a lot of the challenges were happening around the drive-through experience. And if you think about a quick service restaurant, drive-through is a much more complex product than the classic walk up to the desk, order your food and get given it. And so they've made some changes to their playbook on the back of that, where they recommend the new franchisees make sure that they get their in-store experience really up and running before they start to bring drive-through in. And they've made some specific changes around the actual onboarding process of the drive-through in order to make sure that they're able to deliver the customer experience that they know that they need in order to make these franchises successful. So I guess the key takeaways and what we've learned from our journey in customer journey mapping is that these customer journeys need to not be a static document. They need to be something, they need to be a platform for business enhancement. The ongoing analytics overlaid across and throughout the customer journey can be a real opportunity to refine that customer journey and make improvements. That without text analytics, important details can be lost. So you risk oversimplifying that journey, or you've got that very, very simple journey, but you risk losing some of the nuance at each one of those stages if you're not overlaying analytics throughout. And that by blending together that customer journey alongside advanced analytics, you've got a real opportunity to improve those key business metrics, whether that's CSAT, NPS, and ultimately, of course, revenue. And that's me. Any questions?
No question. No questions online?
Oh.
How do you make the insights that you gather from these surveys digestible to different stakeholders via email, let's say?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. One of the things that we learned initially was that we were providing these enormous reports, and the same report went to everybody. And you can imagine once you've had a report and the first sort of 2 or 3 points in it are irrelevant to you, you kind of switch off pretty quickly. And so what we've started to do now, and it's part of the reason why this sort of email and a product that we call Scoreboard has become so successful, is that each of those stakeholder groups gets a tailored report that's specifically for them. So, for example, the ASU Sun Devils, there will be all of the comments that are related to parking and transportation will go to the facilities team who handle that. The concerns around concessions and food will go to the dedicated team there. And so everybody's getting a tailored report. And we've found that by sending those via email, you get a much higher interaction rate and people are much more, what's the word I'm looking for, engaged with that content. And they know that that email, when it comes through every week, is going to be relevant to them. So I think, yeah, hopefully that answers the question. Any more for any more? No worries. Well, if you do have any questions, you'll see us on the green stand upstairs. It'd be great to chat to any more of you. Thanks very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Rory, for nice insights on relative insight as well and what we can do with the data.